Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Startup Mindset. In this episode, I'm talking with Alexa Herasimchuk, who is a product designer at Zendesk. And we'll be talking about how to jumpstart your career in product design. So if this is something you're interested in, stick around. Alexa, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is awesome.
How did you start your career in product design?
I started my career in product design by going to design school. My story actually starts back in Wisconsin. I went to a state school there for 2 years. It ended up not working out, and I had this really cool opportunity to move out to San Francisco and go to a design school. So I did that. I moved here in 2012. I went to California College of the Arts. It's an art and design school here in San Francisco. And I went there to study graphic design. And then within the graphic design department, we had a couple of interaction courses that was a part of the graphic design curriculum. It was in the first intro into interaction design class that I really discovered that I wanted to get into UX design. This class that I took was a night class. It was 7 to 10 p.m. It was a class that I took after 3 other studio classes, and they're all 3 hours long. So it was a long day. But I was so energized in this class. I was so energized by it and by the work that I would go home at 10 p.m. and continue to work on that work because I just loved it so much. So it was there at CCA in that class that I discovered I really wanted to get into product design.
Why is product design such a good career match for you?
I think it's a good career match for me because, fundamentally speaking, product design is about understanding human behavior and patterns and using that information to apply to how we solve problems using technology. I love people. I love understanding people. How cool is it that I can use that interest in my job and designing products that people can use and hopefully improve their lives. So that's one of the main reasons. But I also like product design because it's super collaborative. I work at Zendesk, like you mentioned, and we have a really big team. It's a global team, and so I love being able to collaborate with a lot of different people to really come to the right solution to a problem. So, for example, at work, we'll hold design critiques multiple times a week, and we bring designers together to really understand what's working, what's not working about a given solution. So it's also quite objective. Something else that I think I'm really interested in, just trying to really objectively understand and solve problems. And then I think lastly, the last thing why I think it's a really good match for me is because I really like visualizing, being able to visually communicate ideas. And so I studied graphic design in college, and I think that helped me really get better, faster at that skill of being able to communicate ideas visually and present and communicate sort of a vision. And so I think that's also why product design is a good match, because a lot of what we're doing is presenting an idea, communicating it to a broader team of product people, engineers, a lot of other people in the company, and being able to tell that story.
Alexa, thank you so much for sharing your journey to product design. And now for the viewers out there who are thinking about starting a career in product design, you have a wealth of experience in hiring, reviewing portfolios, and just being a product designer for several years. So in your experience reviewing a lot of portfolios and as well as doing design interviews, what are some of the best portfolios you have seen?
Your design portfolio is the very first step into getting a job. So if you want to get a job as a product designer, you need to have a portfolio. So I think it kind of boils down to a couple of things. You really want to think about designing your design portfolio. Your portfolio needs to be intentional. What I like to usually talk about is think about the people who would be using your portfolio, right? This will be a design recruiter or a hiring manager. So really go be in their mindset. So often when we're reviewing portfolios, we're reviewing a lot of them at once. So think about information overload. You really want to be intentional about where you put your contact information, how many projects you include on your portfolio. If you're not proud of one of your projects, why would you include it on your website? Because that could be the one project that the person reviews and that was your shot. So I think some of the best portfolios, online portfolios, they have max like 2 to 3 projects, your best work. You don't need anything more than that. And then when I'm reviewing portfolios, once I've selected the project that I'm going to look into, the very first thing I look for is the problem statement. So I think it's totally worth it to make sure that you've written that problem statement in a really clear and concise way, because that's the first thing I'm going to look for, because if I don't understand the problem, how am I supposed to evaluate the project? And so if the problem statement is written poorly, and it's already kind of confusing from the beginning, it's already kind of broad, then it's not going to be easy for me to understand how you've solved that problem. So 2 to 3 projects, problem statement, those are 2 really important things that you need to get right in order for me to keep reviewing your project. And then past that, like again, if you think about it, you're going to be in a stack of sometimes like 50 to 100, hundreds of portfolios sometimes. The purpose of an online portfolio is to tell the short story of the bigger story of your projects. So you really want to use it to just capture someone's attention, get them excited about you and your work. So the third thing I kind of recommend is really craft a concise, short story of what your project is trying to solve for. Problem statement include what the goal is. Anytime you include like data points about how you're going to measure success is really awesome. What's your role on the team on the project, or if it was a client project, a student project, just like some quick details about the project, and then show the solution. Very top, show the solution. Mm-hmm. And then past that, you can include some research, some of the diagrams you may have worked on to help understand the system you were designing, those sorts of things. But if you're including like paragraphs of text, it's often not going to be read, certainly not at that stage of the interview process. And so I think I'm not going to advise anyone to not include any of that detail, but I do think that it's better served once you've actually done an interview, and then there you can tell the full story of your project. So I think some of the best portfolios that I've seen get that right.
This is like very valuable information on how to craft an effective portfolio. So moving on, let's say somebody has advanced to the next stage of an in-person design interview. What are some of your tips there? How can someone stand out?
I think a good way to think about it is you want to think about like the different touch points of you and your brand. Who are you, and like what do you bring to the team? Mm-hmm. So your online portfolio, that's one of them. You yourself is definitely a touch point too, but an in-person interview is certainly going to be one as well. So you want to think about ways to connect the different areas that you show up in together, so that when you are in person meeting with the team, they've already sort of like maybe seen some of those connections, right? So you can do that in like many different ways. There's a lot of ways with like even just like fundamental like visual design related like patterns, like using color and typography that you're using on your online portfolio site. Use that in your offline one when you're presenting your work in an in-person interview. Figure out what your, like I said, what your brand is. Like, what's your personality? What are you bringing to the table? Because that's what's going to make you stand out in an interview. Like the best interviews we've had, I think, are the people who really show up as themselves, and like they really are able to tell that story about themselves, and then therefore about their work, and therefore about like how they'll fit into this team, that like in this role that we're hiring for. Really do your research. I think the people who come in prepared and have thought about why exactly they're the right person for the team, with like really specific examples, like they're the ones who are going to stand out.
Okay, wonderful. And in terms of design, like problems, is that a common thing that someone is asked to do it during the like product interview, or is given something to take home and work on?
Yeah, good question. I think depending on the company, you're going to find that some companies will ask you to do like a take-home exercise. Some companies will have these like whiteboard challenges that you'll do in person at an interview. It depends on the company. It also typically depends on the role that they're hiring for. I think if you're earlier on in your career, like if you're hiring for, or if a company was hiring for an intern or a new grad or an associate role, you may find that there might be more take-home exercises. It's like a good objective way to give someone a problem and see what they come up with, and like use that to more objectively evaluate their work, because they like often just have schoolwork or like personal projects, and so this is a way to give them something and see how they like solve for that problem.
You've been a product designer for 4 years. Looking back at school, what do you wish you had learned?
I wish I would have learned a lot more about business in design school. I loved school and I loved my education in so many ways. And something that was great about it was that we were encouraged to really take our projects and like make them blue sky, like anything is possible. And I loved that about school. But I do wish, I think I would have learned a little bit more about how to like bring it back and make it more realistic and really like apply it to a business context. Because when you start working professionally as a product designer, you're going to be working at a business. The business has to make money, and being able to understand the constraints around that are super useful. So that's something I wish I would have learned a lot more of. I think I'm not quite sure if design school has business classes yet. Like I'm not sure if those are anything that like if someone's going to university now that they wouldn't necessarily think of. But I would definitely encourage people to do some work on that on their own. Yeah.
What are some of the design tools you use?
I love Post-it notes. I consider Post-it notes one of my design tools because, like I use them to take notes. They're a really great way to write down an idea and easily like move them around to make sense of like groupings. So even if it's like not necessarily like a system that I'm designing where we're like trying to make sense of a lot of different like thoughts or ideas from like research, even just like when I'm writing down notes throughout the day, it's like I've got like tasks I have to do that throughout the day. So I'll like write them all down, like okay, the tasks are over here, and then something will pop into my head. It's like, oh, I have to remember that. Okay, jot it down. It's over here. So I love Post-it notes. They're super versatile. But if we're talking about software, that's sort of a different question. Do you want me to go into that?
Yeah, absolutely. What are some of the software tools you use?
Yeah, so software-wise, I use mostly SketchUp for my main design tool for like designing the UI of the products that we're building. For prototyping, I like Principle, and for like collaboration and sort of like looking at the user flow, Envision. And those are like the main software tools that I'm using, but I sort of like to think about software tools as something that's a little bit more dynamic than like what are your favorite tools. Because in reality, like if you're gonna be working on a design team, you're gonna have to switch up your design tools to match what the team is using. And that may not always be what your favorite tool is. And so I don't wanna always just stick to like, this is the tool that I use, or like, I don't wanna always have that mindset because like at Zendesk, we use Sketch. But if I were to switch companies and like that company uses like Figma, I'd have to switch to Figma. If I started doing freelance work and there were designers at the company who were already using Adobe XD, like I would need to learn Adobe XD. And so I don't know if like, sure, maybe I have my favorite tools or I have the tools that I'm using now, but I think you have to make sure that you don't just get like stuck into that mindset. You like the point, or the more important point about design tools is that they're a way to collaborate with other people. And so you have to be choosing the tools that will make it easiest for you to collaborate with the people on your team.
Okay, so not fixed, more adaptive like approach to always ensuring that you're able to kind of transition between tools, picking up other ones, or just like depending on the team you're working with.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, what is your design process like?
It's a little bit different depending on what type of project we're working on. So I think it's a hard question to actually answer.
Sorry.
Yeah, which is fine. Product designers are typically known to be more like generalists. We really are there at the creation of the project or like the problem statement, you know, throughout the discovery phase. Hey, is this actually a problem? Defining that. All the way through like iterating and creating some ideas, brainstorming, designing that system. And that's like a very iterative process and collaborative. We involve a lot of different people on different teams to really figure out, is this the right solution to the problem? And once it's decided, we're the ones who create that vision, design the vision. That's both through designing the UI and also designing how it's like the UX, how it's going to interact wherever it's going to live. And so that sometimes involves prototyping, and then we'll also work really closely with the engineers when they're actually building it to make sure that it's being built, how it's designed. And I mean, product managers and engineers are very collaborative in the whole product design process as well. I think like especially with engineers, like you want to make sure that you're getting feedback from them super early on, because there are a lot of technical reasons as to why something will work or not, and you need to have that discussion with them much sooner before you're like, hey, this is the thing we're going to design. It's not like that. It's very collaborative. But then the like end stages of the product design process are a lot of like understanding success. Like, is this working? And we also do a lot of research throughout this process too. And maybe at the beginning is like discovery, and more towards the end is usability. And if you're lucky, you'll have UX researchers who are partners on your team. But that's like, when you think about process, like that's sort of what it is, and it kind of circles back. It's a continuum. And I think also like the bigger the team, or like the more people at the size of the company that you work at, the more specific the jobs are going to get. So if we're going to start up, maybe as a product designer, you're going to do a little bit more research and content strategy, and like really do some of those roles that if you work at a bigger company are going to have more like specialists at. So like at Zendesk, we have UX researchers, we have content strategists, and that they own that specialty. So we work really collaboratively with them.
Who are the people you follow in product design?
Actually, there are a lot of great people on YouTube, a lot of great designers and content creators on YouTube, which I think are creating a lot of great stories and teaching, helping teach new designers like what's the latest and greatest. So I do follow a lot of design creators on YouTube, which has been a really great resource. And we live in San Francisco. There's a lot of designers here. There's a lot of people to look up to. Last week I was just at an event with Julie Zhou, over at Facebook, and so that was really cool to see her give a talk about her latest book, The Making of a Manager.
Is she the one who leads the Through the Looking Glass newsletter?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, it was really cool hearing her talk about that story. But we can save that for another time. But I guess and I go to a lot of these events, and you meet a lot of people. Like, it's just like there's so much energy here. But I spend most of my time at work at Zendesk, and so I think the most influential designers in my life are my colleagues. I was really intentional about joining the Zendesk design team, and that I was really looking for a team with a diverse background and experience, just like the amount of years that they've spent designing. So at Zendesk, we have interns, we have associate product designers, people who are right out of school, all the way to like principal product designers, people who have been designing for years, decades. And so that's who I'm with. Like, that's who I learn from. It's cool to learn from the designers who are just out of school, because there's new ways of thinking and just like a fresh perspective that they bring, which is different than someone who's been designing in the industry, like our principal product designer, who brings like another just like really interesting breadth of experience that I get to learn from. And so that's like hands down the people who I'm learning from the most.
So having been a product designer in Silicon Valley for a few years, you're really at the pulse of the product design industry. What are some of the things that you're excited about, some trends that are happening right now?
Something that's really big right now are design systems. So at Zendesk, for example, we have a team of designers and engineers who are just focused on creating that component library, the patterns, the systems that both designers and engineers use to piece together our products. So I think it's something that's a little bit less known to someone who's starting off, because often you're creating projects from scratch and you have to kind of create your own system. But it's really cool. By the time that I've formalized this is the direction of the product that we need to be designing, I'll go into Sketch, and a lot of it's just drag and drop. We're dragging a field here, a button here, the typography, it's already been, all the sizes are already determined. So that work has already been done, and it's already been tested for usability, it's been tested for accessibility. This thing is really robust. And especially here in the Silicon Valley, design systems are really good for making sure that our products are accessible. And so accessibility is things like, does our product, how does our product read in different languages? It's things like, if someone were to look at our product who is colorblind, are they able to use the product properly? And then, if someone is using our product just through audio, like, are they going to be able to navigate through it? So these are things that are already built within that system, and so all that work has been done. And when I come in and like I'm putting together the new feature, drag and drop, and then when we're doing user research, we're testing for other things.
You've shared so much already, like useful information on like product design, how to jumpstart a career in this. And now you have a wealth of this information, more of it, on your YouTube channel called Hello, I'm Alexa. So what's the story of this? Why YouTube?
Yeah, so I've been on YouTube for about a year, just over a year actually. And it's been a super rewarding experience so far. My YouTube channel is about product design, careers in tech, and life. And I started my YouTube channel for 3 reasons. The first 2 are like more personal. Basically, the year prior to me starting my YouTube channel, I remember a couple of instances where I was given the opportunity to like be in front of a camera and tell my story, and I totally like fumbled it, and I didn't want it to be that way. I was like, I have a lot to say and I want to say it in like a meaningful way, but I did it like it didn't come off in the way I wanted it to. And besides that, it was like in meetings at work, or if I was given the opportunity to like speak, like just introduce our team at work at an event, I wanted to do that, but I would get really nervous about it. And so I was like, what's a way that I could overcome this fear? And that was making videos. I was making videos on YouTube. When you put together a video, you have to watch yourself, like listen to yourself speak, and like really do that repetition to understand your mannerisms, like really think through how you're going to tell a story. So like I was practicing speaking through using YouTube in order to get over this fear I had of public speaking. So it's been this like really cool way for me to just like become better at that. So that was one reason. The second was I just am super interested in video as a medium. I think it's really a really cool way to tell a story. It's so dynamic. There's so many layers. You can between video, audio, images, typography. Like there's so many things you can piece together to share, like an experience you have, or to share a story you want to tell. And I love that. So I wanted to get better at that. That was the second. And then the third was because I'd found myself already meeting with so many people who wanted to get into product design, mostly here in the San Francisco Bay Area, because that's where I'm at. And I found myself I found myself telling a lot of the same stories, having a lot of similar conversations. And although there's nothing like just one-on-one, talking with someone, listening to what they're going through, and trying to recommend something more personal to what they're going through, I found myself like telling a lot of the same stories. And so I was thinking, like, how could I share these stories with more people? And so because I had a lot to talk about, I decided that would be what my YouTube channel would be about.
Great, and actually it's a really, really valuable resource for product design, people interested in product design or continuously advancing their career in product design. And one of the things that actually might take a bit longer to find is your Patreon page. You have like a special tier there. Can you like share what that is about for coaching?
Yeah. So I started a Patreon account recently, mostly because I wanted to start to work with a couple people more personally on helping them become the product designer that they want to be. And so since I've started YouTube, I've been able to connect with so many more people outside of San Francisco, all over the world. It's been super energizing for me. I love talking to people. And therefore, I started to get a lot of requests from people if I could review their portfolio. Mm-hmm. And I've done a lot of portfolio reviewing in the past, both professionally and just on the side. And since I've started YouTube, it's become a little bit too unmanageable for me, and so I needed to set that boundary because I want to provide like the best feedback to people and really help them create, be the product designer they want to be, and like get the job. And so I had to set that boundary. Like, I can't offer personalized portfolio advice anymore. It takes too much time for me. I want to make videos so I can really share my stories with more people. But if you do want to work with me directly, I've started this coaching business. And so I'm starting small. There's a couple openings still left through Patreon, and I'd love to work with a couple people who want to take that next step in their product design career.
And if you do go and check out Alexa's YouTube channel, you'll see that basketball has quite the presence there. So Alexa, what's the story behind you and basketball?
Yeah, so basketball has always been a huge part of my life. I've been playing since I was like 8 or 9, around 4th grade. And I grew up, I played in elementary school, through middle school, in high school, and then 2 years in college. And so actually, I played 2 years in college, and so when I transferred to move out here to San Francisco, I had to quit playing college basketball, which was kind of this weird identity crisis for me because it was like a huge part of my life, right? So when I moved out here, I didn't know anyone, but I knew that I loved basketball. So I went and found some of the best places to play pickup, indoor, outdoor. I joined a bunch of leagues. I made a lot of friends that way. It was really cool. But I think I'm always drawn to basketball because I also attribute a lot of these soft skills, I guess, to lessons that I learned growing up and playing basketball. And so it's a part of me. It's a huge part of me, and I'm really grateful for basketball because of that. So these are things like teamwork, hard work, perseverance. Actually, perseverance is one of my favorite words. It was actually a word that I used to talk about myself when I was interviewing for my job at Zendesk. 2 years ago, I discovered that one of my favorite emojis that I was using was the persevere emoji. So I don't know if you know this, but there's an Emojipedia website. You can go and search emojis and
Emojipedia.
Yes.
Okay.
Links below.
Okay.
So you can go and search emojis and paste them into things, into projects and stuff. And so I had recently discovered that one of my favorite emojis was the persevere emoji, and I was like, oh, this is great because I love that word. It was a word that I learned from one of my high school basketball coaches that stuck with me. When I was in high school, I made the varsity basketball team as a freshman, which was a huge accomplishment for me. I'm still super proud of that I had done that. But my freshman year, our team lost all of our games except for one. So we lost 24 games and won 1 game the whole season. And that's not great. That's frustrating. It's kind of embarrassing. All these, it was hard. It was not fun, right? You don't want to lose all those games. I didn't let that tear me down. I loved basketball even more. I wanted to be better. And perseverance was this theme that kept coming up, and my high school basketball coach taught me what that word meant. So I really identified with it. I was I'm here to be better. And so I apply that to my professional self, how I want to always be better at my work, and I'm the person on the team who's always going to try to be better. And so I told that story when I was interviewing. I can't not talk about basketball as a part of who I am professionally. They're just so intertwined.
And that ties back into sort of the personal brand and how to stand out, sort of what we touched on earlier.
Exactly.
And to our audience out there, if you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you're interested in more content like that, make sure to subscribe to the Voxel Studios YouTube channel. I hope to see you next time. Bye.